All right, good morning, everyone. 48 First Alert Meteorologist Eric Burke alongside meteorologist Chelsea Aaron. It's 10:16 on your Thursday. Just want to give you guys the quick update regarding the latest potential winter storm approaching the Tennessee Valley. Just go over some of the new model data, some of the scenarios we're dealing with, just to let you know what's going on. And of course, you'll have your newscast at noon with the latest information. So we'll go with the winter storm warning. We have been, first of all, it's very cold. Wind chill dipped down to 3 degrees there in Lincoln County this morning. Right now, current wind chill in the teens to mid-20s. We'll start to see a little bit warmer air moving in as we go into the afternoon. Nice to see some sunshine, too. High temperatures today in the mid to upper 30s, so fantastic weather for you to get any last-minute errands ran or do a little bit of winterization. This Facebook Live video is posted on multiple pages. We are monitoring the comments right now on my meteorologist Eric Burke page. So if we're not answering your question, we apologize. It's just hard to have it on multiple streams. We're also on YouTube as well. But this came out early this morning about 4 a.m. or so. National Weather Service in Huntsville upgrading us from that winter storm watch we had yesterday to a winter storm warning. This goes into effect at midnight tonight and will go through 6 a.m. on Saturday. So that does include all of our North Alabama as well as Middle Tennessee counties. This continues up through, I think, the state line of Tennessee and Kentucky, West Tennessee, and all of northern Mississippi. So this is going to be a major impact event as far as travel impacts for sure, but not just for us locally, but also the surrounding areas too.
And Eric, as you were saying, a lot of new updates coming in with the model data. And as we're getting closer and closer, granted, we're less than 24 hours out at this point, things are coming into better focus. So note, there are still going to be some minor shifts in the forecast. That doesn't mean we're necessarily going back on the forecast. We're still expecting snowfall across the region. In fact, north of Highway 278, north of I-20, that's the better chances for snowfall, but we're also tracking more of a wintry mix. So some sleet, freezing rain will be possible as well, and we're going to go through all of that. But just note, one thing is for certain, hazardous travel is going to be expected area-wide. That could begin as early as tomorrow morning, Eric, and that's going to race quickly from west to east across the Tennessee Valley throughout Friday.
Yeah, no surprise here. A lot of school districts are already closing for tomorrow. They started trickling in actually yesterday afternoon, just based on the latest forecast. You could always find that list on our website, WAFF.com. It's right there on one of the top tabs. I believe it's highlighted in a certain color to see if your employer or your student's school is closed tomorrow, which a lot of them are, and probably for good reason. This is all going to really start to ramp up late this evening, overnight, and through a good portion of the morning. I think that will be the heaviest snow event portion of this storm. It's not going to be just picturesque winter wonderland for its entirety. Some of you will see snow through the duration of the event, but basically what the models have been hinting at is we get a little bit of warm air creeping in by mid to late morning into the afternoon, and that's going to lead to kind of the messy side of the storm. We'll have some sleet, and we'll go through all this coming up in a little bit, but just know that the snow event is still on. We are expecting snow across the area. It's just not likely going to be start to finish snowfall for parts of the Tennessee Valley. And you're looking at your winter impacts here. Hazardous travel, that is a given. Driving in and around town, a lot of the roads have been pre-treated by the brine trucks. Just know those bridges and overpasses, those are always the first to go. And a little bit of uncertainty here with the ice that we see building up, maybe some models hinting at more, others just kind of a glaze. No ice is good ice here. So there are still some questions. We are 24 hours out. I wish we could just take our forecast from 72 hours ago and say, hey, this is what's happening, and that pans out. But that's not how weather and forecasting works, unfortunately. So there's always going to be some tweaks to the forecast that we make closer to the event as we get that better model data coming in. So the next graphic there, Chelsea, we're still sticking with the snow forecast. Might not be as high as you would hope for all the snow lovers and enthusiasts out there, but we still are anticipating a big snow for us here in the Tennessee Valley. Any snow is big snow for us, as it is such a rarity around here, but it's more the impacts related to the snow that we're concerned about. This isn't going to be perfect sledding weather per se. For some of you, if you do have sledding plans, maybe 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, even before breakfast. That might be the window to do it. So Chelsea, you could kind of take over from here for a sec.
Yeah, and Eric, you talk about, many of you expecting a wintry wonderland. Granted, we live in the South, remember that. Even if we do get snow, it's not going to be that fresh, powdery, airy snow that you see in Breckenridge, Colorado. We get that wet, slushy, compacted snow. When you're trying to make a snowball, you could almost hurt someone because it just becomes a solid rock or ball of ice. And some people, just checking the comments, Amanda, you said, sounds like we are getting close to that quarter-inch mark in ice. Yes, this is something that we're closely monitoring, and as Eric was mentioning, it doesn't take a lot of ice to cause problems. Note, you can drive on snow, especially if the roads are treated and the roads are plowed, but you cannot drive on ice. And any little bit of ice that we see, that's going to increase the concern for already hazardous travel conditions that we are expecting. And note, with our winter storm impact graphic that we just showed you, at this point, the power grid, power outages, that threat seems low, but if that threat for ice were to increase, more than likely, especially for freezing rain, that threat is going to be increasing as well for power outages. And that's not going to be a good thing either, because we're still dealing with dangerously cold temperatures. Now, granted, this is not going to be like last year where we are frozen, stuck inside for nearly a week. Temperatures are not that cold, and we're not expecting consecutively cold days like we had last year. However, yes, this will take some time to thaw out. If we do end up getting a good snow, maybe even a combination of a snow and ice pack, that's going to cool us down. Temperatures still right around that freezing mark, barely above freezing through Saturday. We will see some partial melting, but note, Saturday evening and into Sunday morning, everything will likely refreeze back over that's partially melted. And it's not really until Sunday afternoon that we could see a good thaw. So maybe some travel impacts lingering early next week. I'm hopeful that by next Monday, things will look a lot better. But again, that's just all going to be dependent on how tomorrow plays out. So Eric's about to take you through some of our latest data when that snow could be creeping in overnight tonight and throughout tomorrow morning. We do still expect the primary onset of this precipitation to be snow showers, but we also could see that freezing line moving north quite quickly, possibly as early through the mid to late morning hours. As that freezing line moves north, that's where we could see the transition from snow showers to possibly sleet. The sleet could be heavy at times, and granted, any kind of freezing rain, things of that nature, wintry mix, that will help to melt the snowpack, and then you combine that with freezing temperatures overnight Friday. It's not going to be good.
Yeah, and Chelsea made a great point there, talking about this is going to be not a long duration event. This is not January of 2024 where we're shut down 5 to 7 days. I would say by Saturday, late morning, afternoon, major roadways see huge improvements, and then some of those more rural roads, some of your county roads, maybe the higher elevations, those roads might take a little longer to see drastic improvement, but at the latest, I think by Sunday, we start to see area-wide significant improvements as far as travel and travel concerns, given the road and just looking at our temperatures. But what we're showing you here is the graph model. This is midnight now. A few models are hinting at maybe some very cold rain or even a wintry mix coming in. And before midnight, I think that would mainly be for our western counties. But for the most part, the arrival time does look to be midnight, but more looking likely like a 3 a.m. window here. Stop it at 2 o'clock. You got to pay close attention to our temperatures at the surface, obviously. We've got 32 in Florence, but it's showing 34 in Tupelo. Looking at the colors on the map, the darker the blues, the purple hues are, that's going to be your heaviest snowfall. And that all starts to eventually trickle in from the west, moving in a west to east fashion. Where you see the heavier snow, notice how that Florence temperature dropped now to 31. Basically, as the more snow is falling, it's effectively going to cool that column of air and kind of drop our temperatures across the board. And here it is 3:30. Most of you sound asleep. Your students don't have to go to school tomorrow. Maybe you've got the day off work as well, and you're sleeping through the best part of the storm as far as that snowfall goes. And this is kind of what we're thinking as we get this big initial surge of pretty decent snow. Could see snowfall rates of maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches per hour. And if that happens, anything that falls is likely going to start to stick nearly immediately. Temperatures today for highs only in the mid to upper 30s. So that means your ground surface, sidewalk temperatures, definitely the grassy areas that are at or below freezing. This is going to start to build up pretty quickly here. Continuing now this is where it gets tricky. Not just the surface temperatures come into play, but rather you go higher off the ground into kind of those levels of the atmosphere, a few thousand feet off the ground. We start to get that surge of some warmer air coming in, and that's where we're really now looking at more of the messy part of the storm. It's not going to be that winter wonderland. This is where we're going to start to see that nasty sleet coming down, potentially even just very cold rain showers across the area mixing in. And whether or not that rain is just rain itself or becomes freezing rain. Remember, freezing rain is liquid raindrops, obviously, that will freeze instantly when they hit a surface, a road, a sidewalk, your vehicle, for example, that is at or below freezing. And that's where we start to get that concern of that glaze of ice. So it looks like a good snow event, at least through about 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, potentially. And then from 9, 10, 11 into the afternoon as our temperatures hover right around freezing or just above, that's where we get the messy part of the storm. This is why we're saying it's not going to be that winter wonderland. Nothing pretty about sleet. It always reminds me of Dipping Dots, the delicious ice cream treat. But that also starts to accumulate and build up too, and it turns into kind of that slushy mess. And then when temperatures dip again as we go into Friday afternoon, that Friday evening commute, all of that nastiness then starts to freeze, and then the roads really get difficult to travel on. If they are coated in ice, it doesn't take much of a grade, a hill, or anything, and your car is just struggling. You're spinning your tires. Sometimes you start going sideways, and it just becomes a real mess too.
And Eric, you helped to kind of tweak this graphic earlier this morning, and I think this is a pretty good depiction. Note, still the highest threat for any ice or sleet, any kind of that wintry mix that's not going to be full-on snow primarily throughout the day. It's going to be for areas south of the Tennessee River, and our high-resolution model data is basically showing this pretty stout warm layer around 5,000 feet. And that's when the low-level jet is going to be kicking in. So think mid to late morning hours, possibly as early as 9 o'clock in the morning, maybe closer to 10 o'clock in the morning. This is where, yes, all the beautiful snow that we see early on initially could transition into more of a heavy sleet or even a freezing rain. Now, the freezing rain potential at this time is still low. I think if anything, if it's not snow, it's going to be sleet, but you can kind of depict out in the colors here where you live on a map, which county is yours. In the pink, that's going to be for areas mainly along and south of the Tennessee River with just a few exceptions. And then the freezing rain, the closer you get to Highway 278 and also I-20 up through I-59 into DeKalb County, Fort Payne, that's where we're going to be closely monitoring for possibly 1/10 to 2/10 of an inch of freezing rain. And again, once you get into that 1/4 of an inch range, that's where you can start to have pretty big issues.
Yeah, that's where the nastiness comes in. Even just a glaze of ice will certainly cause some headaches, and it unfortunately will also slow the thawing process as we get into Saturday. So we made this graphic specifically for the midday period. It says 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Some of the models, this could be maybe 9, 10 a.m. Just something we're watching here, but this is what we called going to be the messy part of the storm, where it's not just that beautiful snow. Some of you will see snow for the duration, mainly north of the state line into Tennessee, far northwest Alabama, where we kind of have that sweet spot of our snowfall totals. But a lot of us will be seeing that sleet. And remember, sleet is essentially a snowflake that falls, moves through a warmer layer, starts to melt, but as it gets closer to the surface, it refreezes and it loses its beautiful quintessential snowflake shape, and now it's just kind of that slushy, kind of the ice pellets, if you will, not quite grapple, but more or less like the Dippin' Dots here. The pink area is the biggest area. That's going to be that mix, and it will be kind of interesting to see exactly what type of precipitation we're seeing, because if it's falling on that snowpack, then that's kind of your base layer surface as far as the roads go. And the reason that orange area, this is just based on the temperatures, but also a good portion of the forecast for that orange area is based on some of the ice models that we are looking at. I believe this is the American GFS, and it shows kind of that same area. Anything over a glaze is troublesome. A tenth of an inch, then you start thinking, well, that tenth of an inch of ice, what is it accreting on? Ice accretes, it doesn't accumulate. Ice will accrete on those tree limbs, those branches, and those power lines. Thankfully, with this system, we don't have a lot of wind. I think the wind tomorrow might see some gusts to 15 maximum, so that's something we have kind of working for us. But this American GFS model has been persistent, bringing out some places over a tenth of an inch of ice too. And that's where that really gets concerning, kind of highlighting that area south of the Tennessee River, in particular for that ice. We could show you some of the other models as far as this potential ice, because this is a big variable in our forecast and will really kind of tell the tale of how this system comes together. So that was the American GFS. If we go to the European model regarding ice, notice these are a lot lighter. This is more in that glaze category. And the absolute worst case scenario that I've seen so far, and this would be
the nail.
I don't want to say crippling, but I would not want to see this actually verify. If you go to that North American model here, this would be terrible for us. And again, that's, I think, well overdone. I don't think it's factoring in the temperature profile. Something I was talking with Chief Meteorologist Brad Travis about earlier this morning was, even when we were forecasting some of these severe weather events, is that the NAM tends to take a much warmer temperature bias. That plays a role in severe weather, but obviously a huge role when we're talking about the difference between 32 versus 32 and a half, 33, 34 degrees, because that determines our precipitation type. So,
and this is why we always like to say, your model is only as good as the meteorologist that is interpreting it. We use models as guidance pretty much, but it's not gospel, and you have to know the limitations between your models. Eric and I were talking earlier about the GFS. The GFS tends to be dramatic on several things. So granted, we're going to take all of these things into account. We're not saying that that is going to happen, but it could. And again, as we're getting closer, things are coming into a much better focus in terms of all the data that we're seeing. We're looking at soundings. We're really watching that warm layer. Eric mentioning the glaze. I like to think of it as the glaze donut effect. I talked a lot about this last year, which this is different than last year. However, if we do see more of the sleet, the wintry mix versus the snow scenario for, again, areas south of the Tennessee River with a few exceptions, things will become a skating rink very quickly. I know last year the parking lot, Eric, I don't know about you, but I almost broke my neck a couple of times. So just keep all of these things in mind. We are expecting significant travel issues. Travel is not recommended at any point, whether we see more snow than sleet or ice. The combination, though, will greatly worsen it. That's something that we're certain of.
Yeah, and for those saying, well, initially your snowfall totals were higher, well, that's part of the forecasting process. If I knew what was going to happen 72 hours out, I would have a different job. I'd probably gamble on something and become quite wealthy. It's just, that's part of the forecasting process. So this is the North American model, that NAM, if you will. Temperatures start to cool quickly after sunset. That happens every single day here. Look at the temps. We've got 20s, low 30s, a little bit warmer there over northwest Alabama. Important to note how quickly the precipitation comes in using this model versus some of the other ones that hold it off after midnight. If things start to move in quickly, temperatures then start to fall off. you see a good portion of snow, and this will be kind of the heavier snow part of the storm. We go after midnight now into early Friday, seeing quite a bit of pink there. That would be kind of that sleet mixing in. But I think what the model is failing to do here is factor in, if we do see the snow that it's pointing out with the very dark blues and purples, that air is effectively going to cool, and these temperatures will drop. So that column of air, I don't think would be so much more sleet as it is kind of mixing in with just more straight snow initially. Now you go late morning, we get into that messy part. There's a chance at some point tomorrow we've got just a very cold rain across the area, but if it's hitting those frozen surfaces, that's where you start to get that ice glaze coming in too. So this is the NAM model. Brings that freezing line way up to our north, and some of you in Middle Tennessee will see snow for the duration. This one is kind of taking that warmer bias though, for sure. But just continuing to kind of interpret many of these. This is the high resolution model data coming in, updates hourly. It's got some warmer temperatures too, but then here at 8 o'clock, we've got 20s and 30s, which it brings in that cold rain kind of initially, and then we get kind of the snow. But this is still 3 a.m., hovering right around that freezing mark, and then it really does kind of give you that thump initially of that heavy snow, and that is longer than what some of us would think would stick around as far as that big time snow through the morning hours. But if based on kind of our forecast, initially that's going to be the most widespread and intense snowfall, poor visibility forecast, and this is where we could pick up that quick 1 to 3 inches of snow right out of the gate. Where is that one?
And Eric, we've been saying this, but knowing exactly where that freezing line is going to be is basically key tomorrow. Knowing exactly where it sets up. Now, some models have it setting up through Lauderdale, Colbert County, back into Athens, and then sinking south just along the northern edge of Marshall County. Again, those models are trying their best to make an accurate depiction of that. But there's a lot of factors at play. Just as Eric mentioned, I agree that the NAM is bringing in the sleet, the wintry mix, freezing rain potential way too early, because it's going to be a domino effect. If we see primarily snow initially on, which we believe we will, it's going to cool the entire column and basically the surrounding air temperature. But again, these are all the things that we will continue to look at. Eric just pulled up a good summary as we head throughout the day tomorrow, because there's a lot of moving parts, and just depending on where you live is basically going to be indicative of what you see. So during the early morning hours, that's where we will see primarily snow. That's the best chance to see the snowfall. And we've been talking about this all morning. You know, many of you might be disappointed because that primary window for snowfall is likely going to be 3 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock in the morning. So if you're not an early riser, you may completely miss it. By as early as 9 o'clock, that's where we could see these snow flurries or possibly even heavy snow transition back into maybe a heavy sleet at times or freezing rain. That will continue for areas, again, along south of the Tennessee River. If the freezing line were to move far north, and maybe even portions of Madison County as well along the northern edge. That's going to continue at least through the early evening hours, but temperatures likely going to fall as we head closer to sunset, and that's where we'll see any of this wintry mix transition back over to snow. Another inch will be possible on top of potentially 1 to 3 inches that we accumulate by the morning. And then everything is going to refreeze over. That's something we're very confident about. If you don't have to travel tomorrow, please don't. Just stay home. I've seen pictures of the bread and the milk shelves all across North Alabama.
The South's going to south.
Everything's gone. So take all of your milk, take all of your bread, stay home. Maybe have a snow day with the kids. Maybe have a snow day as an adult. I don't know if this is going to be good sledding weather or not. Again, hopefully most of us get the snowpack instead of the freezing rain sleet mixture. I still think that potential is going to be higher the farther south you go.
Yeah, and we are anticipating snow with this event. What that snow looks like come noon is a big question. I said if you want to do sledding, I think early morning is going to be your window for that. Yeah, there's so many variables that go into it. I know you snow lovers, you want this big major winter storm. That wouldn't be great for us here, just we don't have the infrastructure and kind of snow equipment to support that. I like snow myself. I grew up in the north. I worked in Rapid City, South Dakota. But here in the south, it's always just the tough part of kind of putting all the pieces together and actually seeing what's going on. So temperatures at the moment here, it's 10:40 on your Thursday, and we still are below freezing area-wide too. Temperatures right now are in the upper 20s, wind chill in the low 20s. Here is the latest on the graph, Chelsea, and it's actually starting to bring it in here earlier. So this would be late this evening. This is new coming in right now. And we still see, oh, I got the NAM underlaid in there, actually. So
yeah, another model is trying to kind of increase the timeline.
I still think it holds off till after midnight, too, just based
Agreed.
on, what is this? That's the one.
Because the profiles need to saturate a bit.
Yeah. But impactful regardless, and that's been our message since the beginning. Yes, you may have seen other forecast numbers. We are not backtracking. This is an impactful storm. This is going to really make hazardous travel even near impossible at times, depending on where you live. If we get that real heavy kind of initial band too. The best case scenario is that we see all snow, because all snow is at least a little more forgiving to drive on. You add in the sleet accumulation, the slush, the mix, that's where things really get messy. And the graph has kind of been persistent. I just want to show you, for all those calling bust already, you have to look at what the model data is throwing out. And it's been throwing out some big numbers. It's been throwing out some big numbers too. This is 3 different models here. All are showing 4 inches for Huntsville. I don't think that's factoring in so much the sleet transition, just a straight 10-to-1 snow ratio. If we get a drier snow, that's not going to build up as much. Here's potential for Florence. Now, you've got 3 models showing anywhere from 4 inches and 8/10 to over 5 inches of snow. And we do think northwest Alabama will see the greatest snow totals out of that, but this is what we're going with as far as our forecast for now, and then the messy afternoon forecast. So
again, if you're in the purple, this includes the far northwestern edge of the state, from Waterloo, portions of Lauderdale County, also southern Middle Tennessee, up through Lawrenceburg, even northeastern Mississippi, Corinth. 3 to 6 inches of snow, and then areas in the blue, which is mainly along and north of the Tennessee River, 2 to 4 inches. And then areas south, the closer you get to Coleman County, central Alabama, we have dropped those totals slightly to 1/2 inch to 2 inches, because you also have to take into account if we see more wintry mixes, sleet and freezing rain, that is going to drop our snow totals. And to go back on the graphic that we made, again, this is midday, I would think as early as the mid to late morning hours and primarily through the afternoon. This is where we could see the snow showers transition into something not so pretty or great.
yeah, it's the midday is the big question. I think the snow up front, I mean, we could always just say, oh, we'll get a trace of snow, and then if we overachieve, you guys would all be happy. Maybe we'll just have to change our forecasting strategy. It's never easy. I wish it was. They will see snow to the north. People have been asking about the airport and flights. I don't know what kind of equipment they have there. I know they obviously have de-icing trucks with the planes, but those decisions are made based on the airlines. Can they get the equipment here? Do they have the staff to fly the planes and everything? So many variables go into that. I can't give you any forecast. I would say airlines would probably lean on the side of caution, given that we are a winter storm warning, and you might have a flight, and maybe by Saturday things will be a big improvement there. It's a big wait and see at this point, but we just kind of wanted to give you the quick overview. We are expecting widespread impacts. Travel will be difficult, and it's the mix into the afternoon before things start to refreeze by Friday evening's commute. Full list of closures, cancellations, delays, all there on our website, WAFF.com. Meteorologist Chelsea Aaron will be in at noon with the latest forecast. And of course, Chief Meteorologist Brad Travis will be with you 4, 5, 6, and 10. I will be in extra early tomorrow. Just want to beat the winter precip on my drive in. And just a day like tomorrow, there's a lot to do in the morning getting everything ready for the newscast. So we had over 1,000 of you, up to 1,100 at one point. Thanks for hanging out with us on this Thursday. Hope you have a great day. Keep checking back for the latest. We've got a winter storm warning goes into effect at midnight. Widespread impacts felt across the area, surrounding areas, and you see the blue there on the right side of your screen. I think the National Weather Service in Atlanta likely pulling the trigger on their winter storm warning later this afternoon. So that's about it. That's your latest summary. Thanks for hanging out with us. For Chelsea, myself, and the 48 Weather Team, have a great day.